Welcome to our instructional video on how to integrate and operate your greenhouse fans with the AegisTec Plus controller and our specialized 42C CIBAC 6F220V interface box. In this video, we will provide an overview of the setup process. However, be advised that images and components in this video are used for illustrative purposes only. Handling high voltage wires from a breaker box requires electrical knowledge not provided in this video. All high voltage wire connections should be made by a licensed and qualified electrician. This video does not explain the safety requirements for making high voltage connections. Let's start with a high-level overview of the system and components covered in this video. We will be focusing on controlling greenhouse exhaust fans, specifically both 110 volt and 220 volt fans. The AegisTec Plus greenhouse controller acts as the brain of the operation. It instructs the fans when to turn on and off based on the temperature set points entered by the grower. However, since the AegisTec Plus controller is designed for low voltage motors, we need the 42C CIBAC 6F220V interface box. This box allows the AegisTec Plus controller to effectively communicate with the fans. For illustrative purposes, we've also included a standard breaker box in our setup. This breaker box will provide the high voltage power to the fans via the interface box. Remember, all high voltage connections should be made by a licensed and qualified electrician to ensure safety. We will now consider how to wire the fans to the breaker box and the interface box. The 42C CIBAC 6F220V interface box is generally used to control either 6 110 volt fans or 6 220 volt fans. In this video, we will begin by showing a 110 volt fan. 3 wires will come from the fan: a ground wire, a neutral wire, and a hot wire. The ground wire will be grounded in the breaker box, and the neutral wire will go to the neutral bus bar in the breaker box. The hot wire, however, will go to the interface box. Let's take a closer look at the interface box to see where this wire will go. Inside the interface box, you'll find a series of terminal blocks, alternating in color between blue and gray. Each set of blue and gray terminal blocks are paired together and correspond to one of the 6 contactors. Each terminal block has 4 terminals. The top 2 are pre-wired to the contactors in the interface box. The wires from the fan and the breaker box will go to the lower terminals. When the contactors engage, the circuit will be complete and the fan will turn on. In this example of wiring a 110 volt fan, a wire will go from one of the lower terminals to the fan, and then another wire is run from the breaker box to the other lower terminal. Because this is a 110 volt fan, this wire will run from a single pole breaker in the breaker box. This also means that we only need to use the blue terminal block with a 110 volt fan. Later, when we consider a 220 volt fan, we will see that both terminal blocks in the pair, the blue and the gray, will be used. Here is another illustration demonstrating the wiring for the terminals inside the interface box. Feel free to pause the video here to look over this diagram. Zooming back out, we can now see how the fan and the breaker box are wired together. Next, we will return to the interface box and discuss how the signal wires coming from the AegisTec Plus controller are connected to the interface box. The AegisTec Plus controller will send the signals to the 42C CIBAC 6F220V interface box that will cause the fans to turn on. Let's discuss how to install the signal wire. The 42C CIBAC 6F220V interface box comes pre-wired with 7 variously colored wires, as seen in this image. The black wire is for the 24 volt DC negative terminal. Let's look at a drawing of the inside of the AegisTec Plus controller to see where this wire goes. Inside the AegisTec Plus controller, the black wire will be connected to the middle row, or the normally closed row. As we can also see in this drawing, the color wires will be connected to the various output terminals. In this example, when output terminal 3 engages, the contactor with the orange wire will simultaneously engage in the interface box, turning on the fan. In a few moments, we will discuss configuring the AegisTec Plus controller to account for the fans. But for now, note that we have successfully wired a 110 volt fan to the interface box and breaker box, and also successfully connected the AegisTec Plus controller to the interface box via the signal wires. We will now consider wiring a 220 volt fan. Nothing changes inside the AegisTec Plus controller, so we will not return to this aspect of the project. Now let's discuss connecting a 220 volt fan. The main difference is that a 220-volt fan will require a double-pole breaker inside the breaker box and will be wired to both pairs of terminal blocks inside the interface box. Let's take a look, step by step. The 220-volt fan will have 3 wires, a ground wire and 2 hot wires, labeled Hot 1 and Hot 2 in this illustration. The ground wire will go to the breaker box. However, both hot wires will go to the interface box. Inside the interface box, you will recall that each contactor corresponds to a pair of blue and gray terminal blocks. For the 110-volt fan, we only needed to wire into one of the terminal blocks in the pair. In this image, the blue terminal block. However, with a 220-volt fan, both terminal blocks in the pair will be used. In this illustration, Hot 1 is wired from the blue terminal block to the 220-volt fan, and Hot 2 is wired from the gray terminal block to the 220-volt fan. Next, we need to bring the voltage in from the breaker box by wiring 2 wires from the double-pole breaker. These 2 wires will be wired into the blue and gray terminal blocks, respectively. Once again, here is an alternative diagram demonstrating the wiring. Zooming back out, we now see that the hot wires go to the double-pole breaker in the breaker box, thus allowing the circuit to be completed when the contactors engage in the interface box. We have now successfully wired a 220-volt fan. Our final step is to ensure the AegisTec Plus controller is configured properly to control fans via the interface box. In this example, we will assume that 6 fans have been wired to the interface box, and the signal wires are connected to terminals 3 through 8, as shown in the drawing of the inside of the AegisTec Plus controller. Our last step is to configure the AegisTec Plus using the touchscreen on the controller. In this example, you can see that the controller is currently configured for 2 roll-up vent motors, 2 fans, and 2 heaters. We will change this to 1 roll-up motor of 6 fans and 2 heaters. First, click on the white screen near the temperature. Next, click the Config button. P0 is the number of vent channels. It is currently set to 2 vent channels. However, we will change this to 1, press Save, and then press Next. Note, you must always press Save when making a change to a configuration or setting. Cycle to the P2 configuration. This is the number of fans. Currently, the controller is configured for 2 fans. Change this number to 6. Then press Save and Next. P4 is the first vent output. This should be left at 1. In this example, this will cause the first and second output terminals inside the controller to operate a roll-up motor. P6 is the first cooling output. This needs to be changed to reflect the fact that the first output terminal sending a signal to a fan is 3. Change this number to 3. Press Save and then press Exit menu. The controller will restart. We now see that the controller is configured for 1 vent channel and 6 fans. We have successfully configured the AegisTec Plus controller for 6 fans. To change the settings, including when the fans turn on and off based on the temperature of the greenhouse, click System Settings. Thank you for choosing Advancing Alternatives. More information and additional resources can be found at advancingalternatives.com/knowledge center.